嗨，大家好，大家好，GoEast 的学生们，我们 YouTube 的朋友们，你们好，我是 Emily 老师。Hello everyone, this is Teacher Emily，是你们的老朋友了，对不对 ？Am I an old friend of you guys now？ 我已经在 YouTube 上和大家见面了很多次了。I've been on YouTube Live to you guys for a long time。那你们是谁？今天都是谁在看这个直播 ？Who are you guys？ Can I get to know you a bit better？ 那你们如果现在在看，可以跟我打一个招呼吗 ？Can you guys send some greetings to me？ 告诉我你是谁 ？Tell me who you are。你在哪里 ？Where are you now？ 还有你和 GoEast 是什么关系 ？And what's your relationship with GoEast with us？ 我看到了有我们的老朋友小梦小梦又来了，谢谢你our old friend Mom Mandarin, our very good partner. Also we really know the person, the team behind it， 非常好。还有其他人吗？那我在这边等一等。好的，谢谢大家Thank you all for joining us today again。然后今天我们是非常特别的活动 ，So today is a very special event 对不对？因为我不是主讲的老师because I'm not going to be the main lecturer, the main teacher today。今天的老师是一位 GoEast 的学生Today's teacher will be a student from GoEast 他叫 Mikko 是叫 Mikko。然后呢马上我会请 Mikko 出来 So very soon I'm going to invite Mikko to join us 但在这之前我希望大家可以给我们点一个赞好吗 But before that I sincerely ask you guys to hit that like button 因为这样子做的话YouTube 会让更多的人知道我们 So if you do that, the YouTube will push us to more learners like you 所以更多的人可以参加这个活动In that way, more people can join us 好吗谢谢大家好，现在我来邀请 Mikko Now, let me invite Mikko here Hey Mikko
你好 Emily 你好同学们
好同学们好
你们是我的同学因为我是一个 GoEast 的老学生
对老学生对 A very old schoolmate 我们也是老朋友了对吗 Mikko
对
我们是
在上海认识的
是什么时候认识的
When
did you meet
是2017年9天我来上海学习在复旦大学所以我在 GoEast 开始学习汉语
2017年2017 6年以前了6 years
对
ago 对的对在复旦大学那时候 GoEast 在复旦大学还有一个校区At that time one of our campus is very close to Fudan University
对就是大学路的旁边
对大学路的旁边不知道我们还有没有其他同学记得大学路And do any of other students still remember that campus and the 大学 road 也可以告诉我们Please tell us 然后 Mikko 你刚开始学习的时候你是差不多是0吗是 total beginner 吗
差不多我是芬兰人所以我在芬兰不知道我来中国所以我开始学习中文但是我学习是 HSK1 的书的内容但是我来上海的时候我开始 HSK2 书跟 GoEast
HSK2
对所以我住在上海1年所以我学完 HSK2 和 HSK3 的书我考好这个 HSK3 的考试所以非常骄傲
非常骄傲对我们也很为你骄傲 We're also very proud of you Like 1 year finished HSK2 and 3 and passed it with a very nice score 那你现在还学习吗
我现在还学习我每个星期有一个 一个怎么说？我每个星期有2个课，所以
有2
一个
次课，
session，所以2个小时每个星期，
嗯，
跟我的老师 Michael 老师，不知
老师，
道有别的 Michael 老师的学生，
对，
但是
有没有 Michael 老师的学生？
Michael 老师是非常非常非常好的老师，所以
对，
我非常我特别喜欢他，我喜欢他的方法，所以我非常开心，我可以跟 Michael 学习。
今天 Michael 老师在吗？王小麦老师你在吗？你的学生又夸奖你了。
他说他今天有这个时候他有一个课，所以我可以说好事告诉事情的对他，所以他不可以听到，所以他不会尴尬。
那你现在你的水平不错了，听起来So now you're at the advanced level. 你考虑过先把你的书翻译成中文吗？Have you considered to translate your book into Chinese?
我自己不可以现在翻译，但是我希望我可以继续学习汉语。我退休的时候我可以翻译我的书。
退休的时候 when you
对对对
retire, you're going to
对
translate this into Chinese, eh? 好，we will looking forward to that day. 我们期
对对对，
盼着那一天。
20年多的
还有20多年呢。
未来。
Still long way to go, over 20 years.
对对对。
好的，那接下来我把时间交给你Now I'll hand the time for you to you, and so you can go through the book with us. I think a lot of students already mentioned how interested they are, and they really want to go deep into those topics. And also we collected a few questions before, so I think I'm going to present those questions in the end, and also along the way. I'm going to see if there are some spontaneous questions, but we'll leave that to the end. 好吗？
好的。
好，大家有问题尽快问，尽情问。
我要换语言，因为我的书的内容是有点特别的，所以我的汉语的我不知道都的什么说 vocabulary， 所以我要换用英文。但是如果你希望问我用汉语问我没问题。
非常好。所以大家别担心Mikko 不用芬兰语。He's not going to speak in Finnish. 然后他会大多数用英语 So mainly will speak in English and then plus a few keywords in Chinese. But you're very welcome to ask your question either in English or in Chinese. 好吗？好，把时间交给你 Mikko.
对。So this is a book I wrote in 2021. It came out in the fall, just before the Beijing Winter Olympics. They were in 2022. If you still remember, that was still the Corona bubble time. So that was a very, very weird situation for the athletes and the journalists who came. But my first connection with China was in 2008 when I was in Beijing as a reporter for my newspaper Ilta-Sanomat in Finland for the Beijing Olympics. And then I was really, really struck with China because I'm from Finland. I'm from Helsinki, which is a city of 500,000 people. Finland's total population is 5.5 million. So coming to China with huge population, Beijing, which is the mega city, really struck me. This is a totally different culture, very interesting, very old. So I started to become very interested in China. I read a few books, no, not just a few, a lot of books about China before coming to Beijing and afterwards. And then I was lucky enough in 2017 to get a scholarship from a fund in Finland that gives out scholarships for journalists to come to study in different countries. There was one program in Fudan University back then. So I got to spend a year at Fudan University studying at a program called Chinese Society, which was like a deep dive into different aspects of Chinese society, from religion to politics, from movies to history. Really interesting course. If you're still thinking about what to study for a master's, I really recommend that course. I'm not sure if Fudan still has it on the program, but still, it was very, very good introduction into China. And I got to spend a year in Shanghai, which was very special for me as well. And I also got to study at GoEast, which was a lot of fun, and really got me going with my Chinese, which was, like I said before, close to zero before coming to Shanghai. But learning the language really helped me to get into the culture and understand what was going on. And during my time in Shanghai, was, of course, as my background is in sport journalism, so I went to a lot of different kinds of sport events, from athletics, Diamond League, to the snooker masters, to the Chinese Super League in soccer, to even the there was back then an ice hockey team that played in the Russian league, KHL, called Kunlun Red Star, who played in Shanghai. So I went to a couple of their games as well. So I got to experience sport as a spectator in China, and also I also played some sports here as well myself. I played soccer in Fudan, and in an amateur team that played in the Sunday League here, and also played. There's a very Nordic sport called floorball that had a team with Finnish expats and then other Nordic countries expats, and then we had some Chinese players who played in the Chinese national team. It's really special to get to play some guys who represented their country on some sport. So that was a lot of fun as well. So when I got back home, I started thinking that the story of Chinese sport, especially after the revolution in 1949, was really interesting, because now we all know that China is a sporting superpower that is in the top 3 of the medal table in Summer Olympics almost all the time, and sometimes wins it, like in Beijing 2008. And then Beijing was also about to organize the Winter Games, which made Beijing the first city that has organized both the Summer Games and the Winter Games. So I was really interested in the story of how China became a sporting superpower, and that's my title of the book, The Great Leap to the Top: How China Became a Sporting Superpower. For those of you that don't read Finnish, I expect that's the most of you, all of you. But then, yeah, I was lucky enough to get a publishing contract and could start focusing on writing the book. The book is in 10 chapters. It tells the story from 1949 to 2022, but also it focuses on different sports and different interesting stories along the way. So I thought I'd not from just going through all the numbers and the dates, I share a few interesting stories that I popped into along the way. So if we can get the second slide here, this is where the book starts. Doesn't look very Chinese, does it? That's my city, my hometown in Helsinki, that organized the 1952 Summer Olympics. That became the first place that China, PRC, the Chinese People's Republic, participated in the Olympics. And how it happened was a really interesting story of backstabbing and intrigue in the corridors of sporting power, because, as I'm sure all of you know, back then there was a big dispute who gets to be China in international arenas, because after the communist victory in the Civil War, the Kuomintang party and Chiang Kai-shek retreated to Taiwan, and said that the Republic of China that was in Taiwan was the sole representative of China in international arenas, like in the UN or in the Olympic movement. So when China's People's Republic wanted to participate in the Olympics, there was a huge dispute in the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, whether they should be allowed to enter or not. There was also pressure from Soviet Union that also participated in Helsinki for the first time, that their new communist brother state should be allowed to enter. And in the end, the IOC decided that it would be fair for both Chinas to be allowed to enter, both the People's Republic and Taiwan, which was then known as China, Republic of China. But because of the decision, Republic of China, so the Taiwanese, they got very angry and withdrew from the games. And to make this decision took a very long time, and it was only when the games were already on that the decision was made. So the People's Republic of China could only send one athlete that could participate in the games. They also said and football team and basketball team, but they just played friendlies with the Finnish national teams and Finnish club teams. But this was the man you see here, Wu Chuanyu. He was a swimmer who participated in the Olympics. He didn't do very well. He didn't qualify for the final in his event, but he still was hailed as a big hero in China because he managed to be the first representative of People's Republic of China who was in the Olympics. And then onwards, he became a international success. He won a big tournament for the socialist states in Hungary, and as you can see, the gold medal in the picture. And he was a national hero, and he was unfortunately that he became a national hero because he was elected for the first People's Congress in 1956, and he came back to China from Hungary where he was training, and he was in the People's Congress when it first sat in Beijing. But when going back from Beijing to Hungary to continue his training, the plane crashed in the Soviet Union, and he unfortunately died, still aged very young. So he was still remembered as a sort of a sporting hero, and also a tragic story from the very beginnings of Chinese sport. And when the People's Republic found out that or saw that it could win in the corridors of sporting power, and could also get some quite easily to get some soft power from being in the Olympic movement and participating in international sport, it started very quickly to invest in sport and copied the model of the Soviet Union, their training styles, their methods, their the way that the Soviet sport was run, from building this special sporting schools and also importing Soviet coaches and Soviet training material in the 1950s. And the investment quite quickly paid off. As you see from this picture, there's two athletes there. The man on the right is called Chen Jingkai, and he was the first Chinese athlete to get a world record in a sport. He was a weightlifter. He in 1956 in Shanghai, in a international meet with Soviet Union, he got 133 kilograms in clean and jerk, which is one of the three disciplines that weightlifting then had in the Olympic program. Now there's only two. And the woman on the left is called Zheng Fengrong. She a year later in Beijing was the first Chinese person to get a world record in athletics. She was a high jumper, as you see. She jumped over 177, so a meter 77 centimeters, and she was also a big hero of the time. But with the Chinese state in some trouble after the end of the 50s, with the Great Leap Forward not going very well, and China becoming more isolated because of the Soviet split and the Cultural Revolution that started in the late 60s and went on until the death of Chairman Mao in 1976. China became very isolated from the international arena, not only in trade and diplomacy and travel, but also in sport. The Helsinki Games, 1952, were the only Olympic Games that China participated until 1980. Because in 1952, when the Olympic Games were in Melbourne, there was also the same decision from the IOC stood, that China and the Republic of China, Taiwan, could also participate in the games. There was a big Chinese team already in Guangzhou, ready to leave for Australia, when they found out that Taiwanese team had got to Australia first, and they had hoisted the flag of the Republic of China in the athletes' village, and that became a big dispute that eventually went on so far that People's Republic of China withdrew from the games and from the Olympic movement until the late 70s. But there was one very interesting sporting story in between, when China became to open up after the worst of the Cultural Revolution was over in early 70s. And you can see here there's an Chinese athlete called Chuan Zedong and an American athlete called Glenn Cowan in Japan in the Ping Pong World Cup in Nagoya in 1971, where sort of an accident helped China and the US to get closer to one another, to end the very hostile Cold War there was during the Cultural Revolution and the years before that, from the war in Korea onwards. Glenn Gowen was a hippie from California. He was still very young. He was 18 years old, and in Nagoya, he one day accidentally stepped into the wrong bus. He got into the bus of the Chinese national team. He thought it was a shuttle bus that would take the athletes from the arena to their hotel. So, as you can imagine, the Chinese athletes were very surprised when a young American suddenly stood in their bus with long hair and very different appearance of China of the time. And all the athletes were very scared to approach him, because in the 70s or during the Cultural Revolution, if you had contacts with America, you could very easily become labeled as a spy and be jailed or struggled against, or you could blend into very big trouble. So there was a deadly silence in the bus as it moved from the arena towards from the hotel to the arena. But in the end, Chuan Zedong, who was the best player of the team, he was the world champion, the reigning world champion in ping pong, in table tennis. He got up and he shook hands with Gowen. He gave him a very nice print of a very nice silk print and some other gifts. And then the next day, Gowen decided to return the favor, and he got some. He went to the market and brought some gifts for Chuan Zedong, and they met again, and the world press was very interesting in this surprising friendship between Chinese and American athletes. in those days than when China and America were mortal enemies. So when the word reached to Beijing that this has happened in Japan, the Chinese government led by Mao Zedong decided to seize on the moment and invite the American ping pong team to China. So you can see from the slide on the left, they accepted the invitation and came to China. This picture on the left is in Shanghai, 1971, where people were very surprised to see the American team, especially tall, long-haired hippie Glenn Cowan amongst them. And they went to all the big cities. They went to Shanghai. They went to Beijing. They saw the Great Wall of China. And it was huge international news. The world press followed their every step. And then this ping pong diplomacy, as it was called, was front page news. And like you saw in this Time magazine, papers would fight to get the exclusive images of their trip. And after they returned to the United States, the diplomacy between China and the United States continued in other levels, and it culminated in Richard Nixon coming to China in 1972, and then it was a trip that Nixon said that shocked the world, that China and the United States could not necessarily become friends, but not enemies, and slowly start to open up a diplomatic dialogue with each other. And also that was a big blow for the Soviet Union, who waited to see that whose relationship with China had cooled down in the 60s and the 70s, and to see that the US and China became friendly was another very special part of the international scene of back then, and also led to the Chinese People's Republic to get some more international recognition and to get a seat in the UN, and to start to push Taiwan from their post as the official leader of China, of the representative of China in the international stage. I'm getting some very weird sounds in my earphones. I don't know if you heard them, Emily.
Oh no, but there's some comments I want to share with you. Like first, your teacher, 你的老师 Michael 来了，然后
你好，Michael。
然后他看到这些照片，这个 Time 的这些照片，他觉得这些照片非常好，他非常的 impressed， 我觉得他非常的惊讶啊。然后还有一些问题，我们可以先回答一下啊。有人问 ，like one question is like, how did you get into publishing of a book? Do you have a journalism background, or did you just contact book publishing companies with your idea? Your topic feels very specific.
Oh, well, yes, I do have a journalistic background. I've been working in journalism from 1999. And I've been working in Ilta-Sanomat, which is one of the biggest newspapers in Finland, since 2003. So there was a lot of people who kind of knew me as a journalist before I wrote my first book. And then to get the publishing contract was pretty straightforward. I just wrote a proposal, a few pages long, outlining what the topic would be and what the chapters would include, and then approached a few publishing houses, and quite a few of them were interested. So I was lucky enough to get to choose a publishing house that I felt was the best.
Really, the long efforts, like paid off.
对。 Oh, shall I continue with my last story from the
OK，
three?
好
We
的，
jump in time for about 50 years. Oh, we, sorry, 10. First, we jump in time about 13 years. This is in 1984, Los
嗯
Angeles Olympics,
嗯
when China came back to the international sporting scene. Actually, the first Olympics China participated in after it returned to the Olympic movement was in 1980 in the Lake Placid Winter Games, but then there were just a few athletes and they weren't really successful. But in 1984, it was a completely different story. In Los Angeles, the gentleman on the left, he was a shooter called Su Haifeng.
嗯
He was the first Chinese person to win an Olympic gold medal in a pistol shooting competition. And on the right, you see the biggest star, Chinese star of 1984. This picture is from 2008 when he lit the Olympic cauldron in Beijing. He's leaning. You probably know from, as well as you know him from his sportswear company as well. He was a very successful gymnast in his day. He won 6 medals in Los Angeles, and he was called the Prince of Gymnastics. So this 1984, the big Olympic success after China has returned to the Olympic movement, really was a both big deal abroad when people started noticing China. There's something interesting happening in China. China is changing. China is becoming more open, but also in China, where people were beginning to get interested in sport much more, to see it as something that China was good at internationally. So China would get recognition and victories after long isolation from the world. So it was like a very big symbol of China that was changing, growing, becoming better very fast in the 80s. So these athletes, when they came back home, there were huge crowds welcoming them. They were really the biggest stars of their day. They couldn't really move without fans. Remember Li Ning in some interview we talked about that he knew exactly how Michael Jackson felt because he was the same in China back then. And then with the success, there was also again a growing investment in sport uh, when the government saw that sport again was a good source of both soft power abroad, international recognition, international success, international uh, press coverage, and also it was a good way to bolster the self-esteem of the Chinese people that they were really good at something, really good at uh, sport, and better than or could compete with other nations in sport, which was um, after the long isolation in the from 50s onwards, something new, something interesting, and something that really told people that times were changing in China. But now we jump to the modern day. You see here is a young Chinese ski jumper. He was, and on the right there are two Finnish coaches, and this picture was taken. Well, I took this picture in Siilinjärvi, which is in eastern Finland. The
嗯
gentleman standing on the right with the jacket with the Chinese flag on was then the new coach of the Chinese national ski jumping team, Mika Kojonkoski. He was a Finnish very experienced ski jumping specialists that was charged with a very interesting project. He came to China and chose athletes who had no background in ski jumping, no background in snow sports, but were uh, talented athletes in other fields, like in gymnastics, athletics, and also martial arts. And he was tasked with creating a ski jumping team to the Beijing Olympics in 2020. This project was started in the autumn of 2018, and it was big news in Finland because it's not very common that you get a team of total beginners trying out a new sport that in Finland was very popular at the time and still is. And so there was a big media event when they started training, and it also showed the amount of investment that China spent for the Beijing Olympics in 2022 when they wanted to participate in every sport, and there was practically no tradition of ski jumping in China. So they sent 20 young athletes to Finland to train with one of the best coaches in the world to see if they could become Olympic athletes in just a few years from scratch, from almost less than zero experience to compete with the world's best athletes. So I went to see them for their first training in a really real hill. They were training in it was still fall time, so there was no snow, but there's a lot of practice facilities in Finland where they use a plastic hill and then they jump on soft pieces of very small chopped wood, so it doesn't hurt when they fall, and they fell down a lot. So you can hear the athletes would fall down from quite high speeds in the skis that they had never worn before, and they would just get up and shout "Measure, measure," and would say would would encourage each other, and slowly you can see progress in just one training session. So you could see that they were very talented athletes, even though they were plunged into a sport that they had never practiced before. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, the project was cut a bit short. But a few of these athletes did participate in the World Cup, which is a major achievement, and could jump from very big steep hills. They're really scary when you're on top of a ski jumping hill. You just see a long ramp down, and then people would jump 150 meters from them and land on their feet into snow. So that was really impressive to see the start of the project and then to follow the what would happen afterwards. And this is the opening ceremony of the Beijing Winter Olympics. That was really like a culmination of how the Chinese sporting story has changed, because when China started to compete internationally, it really didn't compete in winter sports. There was practically no tradition of winter sports in China. Only in a few provinces in the north, Heilongjiang, Liaoning, those kind of places, there was a little bit of tradition in some ice sports like speed skating and short track. But China slowly started investing in winter sports, and then when it was announced that they had gotten the 2020 Winter Games, the investment became huge. Not only just in competitive sports, but also how China would like to change their economy from from the manufacturing base that had led to the economic miracle. But when China became richer and people would have more leisure time, could spend a lot more money, so they could build a domestic sport entertainment or sport leisure industry. So in China there was built huge numbers of ice rinks and ski resorts, and they would get hundreds of millions. The official number, I think, is 300 million Chinese people had tried winter sports by the time of the Olympics. So it also is a story not only of sport, but also the story of China, how China's changed from 1949 to the modern day, and which is a really amazing story of economic growth and becoming a superpower, not only in sport but in every other aspect of the world. But also not forgetting that sometimes the road hasn't been smooth. There's been some people who have suffered on the way. And in sporting terms, it's from the system that was copied from the Soviet Union, especially strong in the 80s and the 90s, where they would just gather huge numbers of talented young athletes to sporting schools to focus on sport and not to give them great education otherwise. So from behind every Olympic gold medalist, there was also quite a few unhappy stories of young people who weren't that good or who got injured during training and didn't have much of an education to fall back on. But as China has become richer and how China has developed, those stories are becoming more and more not so common, because the modern Chinese parents don't really want their kids just to focus on sport. They see education more of as a way of improvement. So their sporting schools have to change to give a broader education to their athletes, and also they have problems recruiting youngsters now, because the work of an athlete is not that popular in China anymore, unless they're Eileen Gu or someone else who manages to win a lot of gold medals. But I think parents know that that's not very, as a career option, that's very risky. And if you don't have any other education, you can find it very hard in your life. So as fast, I'd like to share a few key points from my presentation. And number one is the part of the Olympics history and the start of in Helsinki 1952 that was also a false start. How the dispute over Taiwan's participation and China's political isolation led to decades of not participation in international sports. And after 76, or after 1978, when Deng Xiaoping became the paramount leader, China really started to open up again. In sports, it was return to the Olympics that was the really big thing. First in Lake Placid, but the breakout moment was in Los Angeles in 1984. And then after that, the story of Chinese sport has been really of great advancement from the Summer Olympics in Beijing in 2008, and then the Winter Olympics in 2020, and it's really interesting to follow where the next steps might lie. There's still one mountain left for China to climb. Is in men's football. The national team, I think, just drew with Malaysia and lost to Syria. So there's a long way to go. But maybe China will one day crack even football and then become even more a strong sporting superpower. So that was things I thought I'd share with from my book with you today. And if you've got any questions, please ask.
好，谢谢 Michael。我听了很有意思啊。我不知道你开始在2008年，so it's really fascinating for me to listen to those stories. I didn't know you started everything from like 2008. Was it because the Olympics 是那时候是奥运会对吗？ Did you
对
come
对
from
对，
the
是
Olympics?
因为我来了北京2008
年。
年，对对对，看奥运会，工作在奥运会，所以我觉得是我的故事是我这在北京开始的。
So interesting. Our paths of life actually crossed much earlier than I thought. I was working for Beijing Olympics at that time as well. I was working as a translator.
Really? Wow.
是的。
Who did you translate for?
I was working for the security team. So like we actually met a lot of journalists because like to enter the Olympic Park with all those cameras and things like actually require a much severe security check. 所以很有意思。Yeah.
So maybe we met in 2008. I remember there was a lot of very young, very excellent volunteers who spoke great English.
对。
And very helpful during that time.
Yeah, also that actually also kind of inspired me to really want to kind of bridge the gaps between West and the East, because a lot of times all the miscommunication are due to the lack of like understanding of the language and the culture. So that's also like a kind of one of the seeds why I started GoEast. 哦，看到还有Maria 也来了，她说she's also a translator for the 2008 Olympics.
真的吗？
是的，是的。
哇。
对，好的。然后我们对。
So the 2008 Olympics were not only the beginning of my book, but also of GoEast. That's really cool.
对的。然后我们有一些问题，有一些是we collected ahead from the GoEasters，所以first 第一个问题是how has learning Chinese for you, Mikko, enriched your understanding of Chinese culture and society? Oh, that's exactly what I was talking about. And how has it influenced your work as a journalist and author?
Well, yeah, I think it's been the basis of my work as a journalist and especially as an author, because I think you can't really understand a culture without learning the language, at least at some level, because I think language and is so embedded in how we think and how people think and how they see the world. So to understand a bit of that is, I think it's essential, whichever country you're trying to understand.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like if you really want to talk about a specific, a deep topic related to that country, you think to know the language and the culture will be essential. And that also applies to Chinese, I guess.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Other people also talked about like they went to China in 2019, 11 years later, and people still were talking about the Olympics back in 2008. So Chinese people were still very proud of it. Yeah, so that's what I think one point you mentioned is like how sports is actually a soft power of very influential towards people's mentality and the national pride. So that's why China invested so much into sports. One of the reasons, I guess. Yeah.
I think that's something that's very similar with China and Finland, even in a smaller in Finland it's in a smaller scale. But a big part of our national self-esteem in Finland is the fact that before in the old days we had a lot of very good runners, so who would win a lot of golds in the Olympic Games. So Finland were very proud of those people and says that they ran Finland to the world map because they were stars of their day and everybody knew their names. And now they're people. I don't think you can find another example of seeing so many ecstatic Finnish people in one place is that when the Finnish ice hockey team does well.
哦，
So
对
there's also always a huge party in central Helsinki with I don't know hundreds thousands of people gathering just to go crazy when the ice hockey team wins something important.
，yeah，我觉得
So that's a big part of our national
Oh.
sentiment that we can all get back like together. We can cheer something. In
Yeah.
Finland, as like in many other countries, politics nowadays is very divisive. There's a lot of arguments going on, but when it's still we're talking about sport, everybody kind of feels the same.
United. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sports really united people. Yeah, and the spirit of the sports, right? I think 冰球 ice hockey 是芬兰的国球. It's like the major or the national sport. I guess 冰球。我在加拿大冰球也一样啊。
也是。
对 in Canada 也是。然后在中国我觉得是the proud one is like 乒乓球 like 乒乓球。对我们很骄傲very proud. And then also like a very popular but very painful for us is what you mentioned, the soccer 足球真的是they unite all the people by like people questioning why every like a soccer player is so bad, why the Chinese team is so bad. Yeah. Okay, and then the second question is like how has your perspective on China changed since your time studying in China in Fudan and also at GoEast? And also after you went back, you were writing your book, right? Not when you were there. So does this change your perspective on China? And if so, what is the biggest change you find?
It's kind of, I'm not sure what my perspective on China was before my first visit. It's kind of hard to say, but it was only just a huge interest in my part because China and Finland, like I said, are so different countries, not in population terms, but also the culture and also the role of the individual compared to the state is very different in Finland and in China.
The role of individual. Can you explain more of that?
Yeah. I mean that I feel in Finland that I've always gotten the sense that the society kind of works for me. It helps me in many aspects of my life. Like in education is free, and nowadays I have two kids. They can go to the public kindergarten and get public health care. Those kind of things that are kind of Finland is a welfare state, so a very rich country. So you can feel that the government really or the state is really kind of focused on individual well-being or trying to help the individual, even though they don't have a job, they can still get a basic living from the state. But in China, I think the individual is much more subjected to the state in that way that the state can control or used to control how many children you could have, or it could move you if they build a dam quite easily, or they can censor your opinion in the internet if they feel that it's the wrong opinion. So in that sense, I feel that it's a difference that like the role of the state in my life and the role of the state in the life of the Chinese people is different.
And that's before you came to China or after you
I think
Came to China. Yeah.
when I was in China, I felt that,
Okay. Yeah.
or started to think about that, the role of
Mm-hmm.
the state in the life of a person much
Mm-hmm.
more, and how it differs from my experience in Finland.
Mm-hmm.
And also the one aspect of it's the hukou
Yeah.
system as well, where the
Mm-hmm.
state can say you have to live here, or otherwise you can't get the benefits that the citizens in another other place can.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also over way of state control. And
Mm-hmm.
also when it comes to sport, a lot of these very good Chinese athletes didn't really choose their sport, but the system chose the sport for them because they were tall enough for basketball or flexible enough for gymnastics.
Mm.
As in Finland, it's much more driven by the child's own interests and own ones, or sometimes the overbearing parents. But still, it's kind of, there is no system that says that you should do this. But also but on the other hand, in China, sometimes when it works, it's very effective, and it's brought some amazing results in from
Yeah.
sports to
Yeah.
like economic growth and the railways and things like that.
Yeah. It's much more like you feel it's much more collective thinking and for the collective benefits, like
Yeah,
compared to individualism. Yeah.
yeah.
That's yeah. That's interesting.
And I think
Oh,
the, these sounds like value judgments really easily, but I kind of find it hard to make a value judgment on this. I just found the difference very interesting.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, a sharp contrast, I guess, from those two societies, and
Yeah, and
definitely
that's it.
will help you to think more, like to really from another perspective. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I
And
think you
then
found out that as well in living in Canada. That's must be
yeah,
quite a
so those
different culture.
yeah, I guess that's the why people want to have international experience, to have cross-cultural experience, to go to a culture which is so different from yours, right?
Yeah,
Because most of
yeah,
the those students are from Europe and America. And I think they see China in a not like I come to judge you, but like I want to experience and I want to see the difference, see how things are working differently. So to reflect on a lot of things and to see if I can make a lot of ghost students really want to make a difference for the whole world. And
yeah,
I really like that kind of thinking. Yeah.
yeah,
And yeah, it is okay to be critical and reflective, which I find very valuable when you grow up.
yeah. That's true.
Yeah. Okay, we have three more questions. I saw so many questions coming, but we'll only have a few more minutes, so I'll be
Okay,
quick.
so far
Uh,
away.
yeah. So the next one is like so it's about like your book. So because you're like kind of going to like a China sports success. So were there any surprising discoveries about China's sporting culture like that stood out to you doing your research in China and writing the book?
I found it not just so much writing the book, but just in participating in sport in China, where I
Mm-hmm.
found it there's quite a lot less like grassroots sport in China than it's in Europe. There's not so many people that they're as an adult in working life. Their hobby is to play soccer in a very poor league with their friends.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of that lack of grassroots sport was really interesting. I found I when I thinking about the why the Chinese soccer team isn't doing so well. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the big reasons is that there is not really a grassroots culture where the
Mm-hmm.
small children just play among their friends outside
Mm-hmm.
and just become good players from there because they just enjoy playing. Because I think in China, especially in the cities,
Mm-hmm.
the children's schedules are so full with school and and extracurricular school. So
Mm-hmm.
after school they go to another class
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because education is just so important in which is so not so much in or so competitive which is not the case in most other countries.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like I also feel as strongly nowadays is like how like academic education like in China from a kid is way more important than at least here in Canada. And also like here the sports is so more important than anything else. Like it's very different. Yeah.
It's very like coming from a culture that really has kids after school. They usually go to their soccer practice or ice hockey practice, and not seeing it so much in China. That kind of was
But
was just
yeah, but
wasn't a shock, but I found it interesting.
I think this might change a little bit, or at least like so 2 years ago, China banned the out school like a tutoring business. So you're not allowed to do that for the subjects taught in school. And now also like I can see the like a lot of ghost teachers they have kids now, right? Like when we met, we were both like really just like one person, and now like we're both has families as well. Like and you can see like our hope for the next generation is a bit different from our parents towards us. Or like we just want them to be healthy and to like also get involved in a lot of sports. Yeah. Okay. Last question. What are your next writing plans, Mikko? People want to follow up already. No, do you
I
plan
got
to
another
continue?
book coming up about
Okay.
China, about the kind of the history of the last 100 years, condensed into kind of like the best stories from the people behind the power. It's not new research. It's more like a popular
Uh-huh.
nonfiction. So it kind of
Okay.
relies on research done before,
Uh-huh.
but stories from how the for instance how the power struggle after Mao's death went down, what happened to the Gang of Four and Deng Xiaoping and those kind of stories.
And all those powerful political people behind the
Yeah,
like from the Mao's period to modern, like to
yeah,
today.
actually from 1920s to the modern day, from the
1920s to
like the
modern day.
beginnings of the Chinese Communist Party until
Okay.
the
Oh,
modern day.
is your background not just journalism but also international politics?
Yeah, I guess kind of my when I was studying
Mm-hmm.
in university, it was my
Yeah.
like Finland. We have like a major, and then we have a long other major. So I was doing
Mm-hmm.
international politics. So it's always
Oh,
been interesting in that. So it's kind of
yeah.
like this
Yeah.
time isn't about a sport book, but it's a political book. No, it's
Oh,
not a political book. It's a book about politics, and
yeah.
it's kind of Game of Thrones times sometimes in China when the really powerful people struggle for power. So
Yeah.
kind of for the Finnish audience, at least, it's something new and something interesting. I hope.
Also, yeah, in Finnish. Okay, great. Well, like keep us updated about your new book. I'm sure like a lot of people would be very interested, and the audience for GoEast, I think, either their major or their interest, also in like international studies and politics. So that
So
would be
if you
very
got
interesting.
some
Uh-huh.
publisher here listening, so I'm open for translations.
That's one of the business like what we want to develop as well, like translating all those nice pieces of work. Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Miko. 对，非常感谢 Miko。下次我们如果我们可以跟中国人说，我们用中文说。Okay, yeah,
谢谢
next
Emily.
time we will speak all those books about in Chinese if we got a Chinese audience for you, 好不好？
Okay.
That'll be your final test from Michael 老师。
yeah, 我要学习有更多。
要学习更多。好的，That's a good motivation.
对
And
对，
yeah, just before we end today's session, I want to introduce our next event. So it won't be another Go student. So it will be our Dan 老师 and Maria 老师 to celebrate Middle Autumn Festival 中秋节 with the global learners. So 中秋节 comes in the end of September, but we're going to celebrate a week ahead. So you get to know all the traditions and to learn all the words. and you can share with your Chinese family or friends. So next week, the same time, okay? Like both YouTube would be Dan 老师 celebrating with you guys, and also like on Instagram, Maria 老师 would be there for you guys to celebrate 中秋 with the Autumn Festival together. 谢谢大家。对的，Michael 的老师 ，Michael 老师是 Michael 老师 from our blended courses and beyond classes 。所以 Michael 有个很好的老师。好的，谢谢大家啊，好，再见啊，再见 Michael，